This is the Louie T Network.
Man, I love some football. Man, I love some football. My favorite week is week 1, cause I'm watching football. First comes the preseason, and I don't take a day off. And then it gets even better when your team makes the playoffs. 32 teams go hard for one thing. They work for one thing. That Super Bowl ring. 32 teams go hard for one thing. They work for one thing. That Super Bowl ring. We in the lab room.
But me, your man, Louie T. Welcome. You are in the lab room. I, of course, am your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. Week number 16 in the National Football League. Thursday edition of In the Lab Room. First business to attend to, Thursday night football. Jacksonville Jaguars at the crib, taking on the Tennessee Titans. A little bit of AFC South family business. I have never, ever seen a game on national television as disrespected and disregarded as this Thursday night game. Let me ask you a question. And I don't know how many of you pay attention to promos and commercials and things of that nature, but let me pose a question to you, okay? All season long, I'm pretty sure you've seen promos for Thursday night games that were upcoming. All season long. Whether you're watching the Sunday games and you see a little quick promo for the Thursday night football game, you're watching the Thursday night game itself and they're promoting and previewing the next week's Thursday night game. How many times have you seen the promo for Jacksonville hosting Tennessee? I can tell you how many times I've seen it. One. And the only reason I saw that was because I just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. I was on the channel I had no business being on, and that just happened to pop up. But if you've been watching football the entire week, you want to know what they've been previewing the entire time, and I get it. I understand. We're not used to Saturday football. The lay fan doesn't know that there's a game coming on, in fact, on Saturday. So you want to drill that into the brains of every single football fan imaginable. You want to get it out there into the general public's mind that, hey, we've got not only one, but 2 games starting at 4 o'clock, doubleheader action on Saturday night, Saturday afternoon into Saturday night. We want you to be there and watch those games. But they just skip right over. Remember, there's a Thursday game first. You've got plenty of time between Thursday and Saturday to get that message out. Or you can alternate between infomercials, in between promos for the game. They just totally skipped this Thursday night game. They just said, to hell with it. Nobody's going to watch anyway. Let's just preview the Saturday games and see if we can't get as many viewers to watch those 2 as we can this Thursday night game. I mean, come on, seriously. How many Saturday promos have you seen? I know you've seen at least 5 or 6. At least. Probably seen more like 10 or 11. How many Thursday night Jacksonville Jaguar Tennessee Titan promos you seen? You might have seen none. I should have been in that category, but I just happened to see one. I've never seen a game disrespected like this. But look, I'm not sitting here and trying to make a plea for everyone to respect this game. It's 2 2-win teams. I mean, The disrespect that they're getting, they deserve. They deserve this. However, there is a saving grace here. That saving grace is called Blake Bortles. And Gus Bradley, I need you to not take that saving grace away from me. Now, I know Blake is a little banged up, had a little ankle after that Baltimore game where he was beat up. I mean, he took some shots. He was sacked a number of times. You're telling me that he might play. I'm asking you, Gus. No, I'm begging you, Gus. You want me to get on my knees? Because I will. I can get on my knees. I'm begging you, Gus. If the man can go, if he says, hey, coach, if you need me, I can go. Hey, Gus, please, please, Gus, put Blake B in the game. Otherwise, there's no reason to watch. There's no reason to watch. If Blake Bortles doesn't play, listen to this. If Blake Bortles doesn't play, guess what I'm watching? I'm watching Charlie White Shoes taking on Chad. Don't blame it on the Henny. No, I don't want to watch that game. I don't want to watch those two quarterbacks. No, don't make me do that, Gus. You hold the key. Gus, you hold the key to making this watchable football. Don't do it to me, Gus. Don't do it to me. Please, please. If the man can go, look, if he can't go, I understand, man. I understand if the man can't go. But if he says, hey, coach, I'm good, man. I can play through this ankle. I'm straight. I need you to... Look, Tennessee isn't going to sack this dude 5 or 6 times like the last couple of weeks against those defenses that you saw that put him on the ground 6, 7 times in those games. This is Tennessee. You can protect him this week. Put the man in the game. Give me a reason to watch. Look, I'm going to watch anyway. But if you give me Charlie White Shoes versus Chad Henne, I'm going to throw up in my mouth, and then I'm probably going to cry myself to sleep. But in any event, I'll be there in front of my television set. Either way, let's talk about this game briefly, and then we'll just move on to the next segment of this Thursday edition, Week 16 Thursday edition of In the Lab Room. It's Jags 2-12 versus Titans 2-12. Look, the Titans, there's just no hope there this season. Now, moving forward, maybe there's some things you can build on and hang your hat on. I haven't seen many of them, but there are a few things you can maybe get excited about. Defensively, I've liked what I've seen out of Avery Williamson this season. Haven't seen him in a while. I don't know if he's banged up or not, but he's a guy that maybe moving forward can do some things for you defensively. On the offensive side of things, I really don't know what you do there. I mean, I don't think you got a number 1 receiver on your team. Delaney Walker has been a shining star on an otherwise morbidly bad offense. Your offensive line has been torn to shreds. I think you might have had 5 brand new starters last week. If not, you had definitely 3 or 4. Neither one of your starting tackles are available, or at least they weren't last week. It's been bad offensively all season. Your quarterback position has been decimated by injury, and you just need to start that position brand new. Probably flush that whole thing. Not necessarily flush the whole thing. I mean, Zach's going to be back. Charlie White Shoes needs to be back, but I think Jake needs to be on his way out of the door, and you need to replace him with a rookie quarterback that you probably can hitch the wagon to moving forward. I think that's the best method to kind of move forward with. But in terms of this game, look, your best bet is that Blake doesn't play and you get some Chad Henne. If Blake plays, I think this team is good enough to beat you. They almost beat you in Tennessee earlier in the season. They're playing inspired football. They always play tough. They always give it a good go. Normally, the opposition is just too good. Well, you're not good enough to be good enough to just say, hey, we're going to show up and win against Jacksonville. I think they're at home. They'll have the momentum. Gus Bradley will have these boys ready to play. And I feel like the Jacksonville Jaguars in this game, especially if Blake Bortles plays, there's a lot of young guys out here that I think are playing good football right now. And they're still learning how to play together, man. You see all these young guys, Marquise Lee out there. You see a guy like Denard Robinson. You see a guy like Toby Gerhart, who is finally healthy. I saw him get the ball last week. He actually didn't look half bad last week. He's been dealing with injuries all season long. And then you look around at all the skill guys that you have. It'd be nice to just get some continuity. When Cecil shorts the third plays, when CS3 is out on the field, I think this offense is tremendously better. I think everybody fits into their proper slots and things run a lot smoothly. And things run a lot smoother when he's on the football field. And so I want to see Blake Bortles. I thought he's played much better over the last 3 weeks of the season than he did the first 8 weeks where he started. So you can tell there's a stark contrast to where he is now from where he was at the beginning, which is what you want to see. You want to see progression. You want to see him not making the same mental mistakes that he was making earlier in the season. And I would love to see him use his legs more. Look, I'm not asking him to use his wheels tonight if he plays because he's banged up. But in the future, I would love to see him use his wheels a little bit more. The guy's athletic. Go ahead and show that and make that a threat that the defense has to respect on a game-in, game-out basis. So all in all, whether Blake Bortles plays or not, I'm hitching my wagon to the Jaguars tonight. If Blake Bortles plays, they're definitely winning this game. If he doesn't, it'll be a lot tougher. Chad Henne is more than capable of going in and leading this team to a win, but who wants to see that? I mean, seriously. Please, Blake Bortles, suit up. Gus Bradley, put the man in the game. Let him play. And so that's going to do it for the Thursday night game. I think the score will be 20-13. Jags get it done at home over the Tennessee Titans. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come right back. We'll jump into supply and demand. Welcome back to the program. I thank you for joining me here on the Thursday, Week 16 edition of In the Lab Room, Supply and Demand segment. A lot more participation. This is much more like it. Look, I shouldn't have to scold you, okay? Shouldn't have to scold you to get this kind of participation. But either way, I thank you for your participation. Let's jump into it. So, CF Coasters asks the following. If you could decide which head coaches would you fire this offseason, if any, and why, and who would be their replacement? That's a tough one. I hate firing head coaches because you really don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You can only go off of what you see on the field and what you hear from reports. I do know one guy in particular that needs to go is Mark Tresman in Chicago. That's just not a good fit. I don't know if he's head coaching material in the NFL. He was a great coach over in the Canadian Football League. But as for here, I'm not buying what he's selling, and I don't think the players in Chicago are either. I think his time is up. It's so bad and it's so desperate in Chicago now. They're benching Jay Cutler in favor of Jimmy Clausen. Jimmy Clausen is a career 1-9 starter. Oh my goodness. He's not even a good backup, let alone a starter. It's all bad in Chicago right now. Who would I replace him with? A couple of names to keep in mind. Both Shanahans are going to be out there next year, Mike and Kyle. Wouldn't surprise me if the Bears went sniffing around an experienced head coach like a Mike Shanahan. I don't think right now, with the way that team is set up, I don't know if you really want a young head coach with no experience going into the mix. I think you want a guy that's been there, done it before, because right now it's the blind leading the blind. I mean, after this season, there won't be many veterans with a lot of clout in that locker room left. I think Peanut Tillman is done after he suffered the injury that he suffered this year. Lance Briggs probably going to be on his way out as well of Chicago. I mean, literally you're talking about Jared Allen, who really hasn't produced this year either. Don't know if he'll be back, but you're talking about literally just Jared Allen and maybe Tim Jennings as being the only rookies, or veterans in that locker room. I just think you need to bring in a head coach with some experience in this league that can motivate that group and get them on one accord. And they need someone they can believe in, someone that they know and trust that, hey, he's done it before in this league and he can do it again if we just follow his lead. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them go after a retread, a guy that's already been a head coach, maybe even a guy like Jim Schwartz. You never know. I'm not a huge Jim Schwartz fan. I'm not. I don't think he's a really good head coach. I didn't think the Lions were disciplined, but a lot of times with these head coaches, the first time around, they make a lot of mistakes, and they always vow that if I get another chance, I'll correct this, I'll do this differently. And a lot of times the second time around, like a Pete Carroll, is better than the first time around. And so I think in Pete's case, this might have been his third shot. I think he was with the Jets and the Patriots, and then he got another shot with Seattle. So the more times you're a head coach, usually the better off you are. So we'll see what happens there. But I'm not a huge Ron Rivera fan, but if they win their division, how can you fire the guy? Even if they don't win the division, he probably isn't going to be canned either way, but I'm not a huge Ron Rivera guy, so if you ask me there, I would love to see them replace him and get somebody else in there. Dave Gettleman hasn't used his get-out-of-jail coach card yet, where he gets to hire his own head coach. Remember, he came in and inherited Ron Rivera, so I don't think anybody would bat an eye if he went this offseason and said, hey, I'm looking to upgrade the coaching position and gets rid of Ron Rivera, but I don't see it happening. But that's a guy I would love to get rid of, and I would love to get someone on that football team who is offensive-minded. I think this defense, if you bring in a good coordinator, I think the way this defense is constructed with some of the talented guys that they have, and you make some upgrades in the offseason via the draft and maybe a little bit of free agency sprinkled in, I think the Panthers could be fine defensively. I think they need a good offensive-minded head coach. A guy I wouldn't be opposed to Kyle Shanahan going to Carolina. I mean, a guy that you really know has a knack for having top 10 offenses in this league and can get it done. I'd love to see the Carolina Panthers get an offensive-minded head coach and allow a defensive coordinator with some good pedigree to come in and help that group along and have Cam Newton with a real offensive-minded head coach. That would be great. Those would be my two. I really like Rex Ryan. I think he's probably going to get fired, but you ask me who would I fire if I had the choice, I wouldn't fire Rex Ryan. But again, 3 and what are they, 11 right now? Not going to get it done, and they haven't made the postseason in a few years, so I totally understand the gist of that situation, but I really like Rex Ryan, man. I think it's just been tough luck for him there in New York. But either way, those are the two coaches right now that I look at and I say, I'd love to replace those guys. And it's pretty tough. I mean, coaching it's such a hit or miss type of deal. And so for me, Chicago and Tresman is the one that I can definitely say needs to change. And I think they need someone with some veteran experience in there as their new head coach. Q-Bone, football. My man Q, what's going on, Q? Asks the following. What is the future at the quarterback position for the St. Louis Rams? And is Sam Bradford the Rams quarterback next season? That is a very good question. I think it's safe to say that everyone drew the conclusion that after his injury in the preseason, he was done as St. Louis Rams quarterback. He was no longer going to be on this roster. Everybody basically said there's no way he's going to be back. And I think the way the season has transpired has given Jeff Fisher a different perspective on things. And look, first of all, let me answer the first question you asked, which is what is the future of the quarterback position? If I'm St. Louis this year, I keep Sam Bradford, and I go and draft a quarterback. Not necessary. And Jeff Fisher hates divulging a pick to a first-round quarterback. He hates spending early-round selections on quarterbacks. He'd much rather draft a guy in the third round, a guy in the fourth round, and just go with that. But when you do that, you get the results that you have seen in St. Louis, 7-9, 7-8-1. You get those kind of results year in, year out because you get a mediocre quarterback. A lot of times, it's rare that you find Russell Wilson in the third round. It just is. It doesn't happen very often in this league. You want an elite quarterback, you want an elite player at that position, you need to draft an elite player with an elite selection. And so, I think Jeff Fisher, though, he's not interested in spending a high-level pick on a quarterback. And so, his answer to that is keep Sam Bradford. If he can just stay healthy, I'm thinking Jeff is saying to himself, if we can just get this guy to stay healthy, which is a big if. I mean, how many times have we seen this guy go down with major injuries? It's not an ankle, it's not a knee sprain, it's not a shoulder contusion. These are injuries that sees him miss the entire season. So these are major injuries that require surgery to be fixed. Sam Bradford's going to be back. I think Jeff Fisher is convinced that if he can use those draft picks elsewhere on other positions of need on this team, and I think quarterback will be one of those positions, but it won't come in the first. I don't even think it'll be a second-round quarterback because this is not a deep quarterback draft. I think after the first two quarterbacks come off the board, if they even elect to come out into the draft, keep in mind, Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota both have another year of eligibility in college football. So if they decide to go back, they both could. I don't see Jameis Winston going back, but I could easily see Marcus Mariota saying, hey, I want to go back and play college football again, especially if they don't win in the college football playoffs. He could easily say, I want to go back and win a national championship. So you just don't know what's going to happen there. But if those two quarterbacks do come out, let's just assume they do, those two are coming off the board relatively quickly, and then the crowd, and then with Connor Cook going back to Michigan State, there's not another quarterback for a while. I mean, for a long time. So Jeff Fisher definitely isn't using a first rounder on a quarterback, not a second rounder either in my mind. Third, fourth, fifth, somewhere in there. And I think with Sam Bradford coming back on the mend, and with the way this team played this season, and with some of the victories you've been able to garner, you beat Seattle, you beat San Francisco, you had a chance to beat Arizona, let them off the hook. I think Jeff Fisher says to himself, if Sam can stay healthy, we can win this division, and Sam Bradford will be back on this team. And I think the future of the quarterback position in St. Louis is a rookie that will be groomed and Sam Bradford next season. Can't tell you what will happen moving forward after next season, but for next season, I think you'll have a rookie on your roster as well as Sam Bradford in the mix. You look at Jack M. Jack M says, do the Vikings have a postseason shot at 6-7? Now they're 6-8. He asked the question when they were 6-7 going into that game against Detroit. The answer was no then. The answer is no now. No, the Vikings don't have a shot at making the postseason. That loss against Detroit probably mathematically eliminated them from postseason contention. Keep in mind, there is a potential for an 11-win team to not make the postseason in the NFC. There's no way a Vikings team could sneak in the back door at 8-8 or even 9-7 had they won that game against Detroit, but they lost. They're only allowed to get to 8-8 now. The maximum amount of victories they can get on the season is 8. There's no way they're making the postseason. But even at 6-7 and going into that Lions game, when he asked the question, they still weren't going to make the postseason. Dark Sealer 1995 asks the following. Do you believe that Robert Griffin III is the future at the quarterback position for the Washington Redskins, or do they need to go ahead and draft a guy to replace him? That is something that I'm actually currently working on. I haven't been doing a lot of Redskins videos because I have been working on a huge Redskins video. A lot of what you just asked is in that video. So to answer your question without giving away too much on what I'm working on, these last two games, I'll say this much. These last two games against Philly and Dallas in respective weeks, both at home, are going to tell a huge story as to whether he'll be the quarterback of the future and what his standing within the organization, the Redskins organization, will be moving forward, because I think a lot has been made of Jay Gruden's relationship with him and how he doesn't like him. I don't necessarily know that to be the truth. I think Jay Gruden is just an overly honest guy to a fault. And I think that a lot of the things, and he's starting to realize that a lot of the things he said were to no benefit of himself nor Robert. And it's just caused much more drama that needed to be. But look, there's always going to be drama surrounding Robert Griffin III. You don't need to stir up any more yourself as the head coach. And so I think Jay Gruden is learning on the job what to say, what not to say in these press conferences. He was just way too honest. But if Robert Griffin III, because that game against the Giants was a sign that maybe there is life in Robert Griffin III. If he, and to me the key is he needs to be protected. That's the biggest thing. When he was protected in that game against the Giants, he was good. I mean, starting the game 6-6. I think they need to tailor the game plan to him a little bit more. I think they need to do things to make him more comfortable. as a quarterback. They're not doing enough to make him comfortable. But at the end of the day, if the Redskins don't upgrade their offensive line, and it's not just the offensive line, I don't want to go too deep into detail again. This is something that I'm working on, but there are a number of issues. I'll say this much. He will be on this roster next year. He will compete for a starting job next season. If he plays well in these final 2 games, doesn't necessarily need to win both of them. If he could win one of these final 2 games, play well in both, I think he's the starter moving forward in Washington. But again, those are huge ifs, and we'll see what happens on Saturday versus the Eagles in the last week of the season against Dallas in Week 17. No, they're not drafting anyone. Just to answer your other question, they're not drafting a quarterback. I don't think this season. They may draft a quarterback, but the Redskins are such a team in desperate of filling their roster. I don't think you can use a first-round pick on a quarterback. I just don't think that's the answer right now. I think there are so many other areas of need on this team: outside linebacker / defensive end, safety, offensive line. I think there's so many question marks on this team that you can't use a first-round pick nor a second-round pick on a quarterback. And again, the crop is so weak this year at the quarterback position. Why would you want to? So I think the Redskins right now would be safe to just keep moving forward with Robert Griffin III. I don't think you pick up his option for, the 5th-year option come May the 1st or 3rd. You don't pick that option up. You just roll with him on this roster one more year. And if he plays well, you extend him out. If he doesn't, then you move on. Benjamin Upton asks the following: who do you think will coach the 49ers next season, and what do you make of Colin Kaepernick's future with the Niners? First question: who will coach the 49ers next season? It's always hard to say because you don't know what the organization is looking for in their next head coach. Jim Harbaugh didn't work out with them. He ultra successful there, winning record throughout his tenure. They go to the NFC Championship game 3 seasons in a row, which is unprecedented. He just wore thin on the organization, maybe wore thin on some of the players as well. To me, in San Francisco, that's a veteran-laden team with a lot of young guys sprinkled in. But the core of your team, Patrick Willis's, Navarro Bowman's, even Colin Kaepernick, who's on his 2nd deal, these are all veterans on your football team. I don't know if Frank Gore will be around next year or not, but he's a veteran as well. Vernon Davis, veteran. The offensive line chock full of veterans as well, aside from Marcus Martin at center. So to me, you need a veteran head coach. Again, this is another situation where you don't need a young guy to come in and try to galvanize this group. You need a veteran head coach with experience. I think more so than Chicago, this is where a Mike Shanahan would fit. He's got 49er ties. Remember, he was there with Bill Walsh, and he learned from one of the best in the business. And so he's got 49er roots and ties. I think this team and the personnel, they fit. And he's a guy that loves coaching veteran teams. Remember, when he won his 2 Super Bowls in Denver, that was a veteran group. And he had a veteran quarterback, and he used to give the players, especially the veterans, Shannon Sharp and those guys, to give them time off during the week because he knew they needed rest and that they were a good football team. You need a coach like that understands. And again, he's only a year removed from being in the league, so he understands what's going on. I think he'd be a great fit in San Francisco, believe it or not. And so that's a guy that I think might be on the 49ers radar. But again, you never know in this league what happens. You don't know what the 49ers are looking for right now. They could be looking for a puppet. They could say, hey, Jim Harbaugh was way too demonstrative in his demeanor and his demands and what he wanted. We want a guy that's just going to listen to us and do what we tell him to do. That's the first-year head coach. That's the guy that's never done it before. They may go out and get a hot assistant or a coordinator. Who knows? I don't know what their thinking is, but to me, this team is set up to win now. And in order to do that, you need a coach that understands what it's going to take to win right now. And that's a coach that's been there, done it before. So that's what I think. But we'll see what happens. As far as Colin Kaepernick is concerned, he just needs to fine-tune some things. I don't think it's a situation where he's going anywhere. You just gave him a huge deal. I hear people say, oh, well, the 49ers can get out of that contract for what? I mean, where are you going? Who's the guy that's going to replace him in San Francisco? He's not going anywhere. You fine-tune some things, work on his mechanics a little bit. You get him to understand what you need from him. And I think you work towards his strengths. I think this year, the 49ers threw the football way too often. They did not have a good enough balance for me. If you just get back to basics with Colin Kaepernick, I think he'll be fine. I don't expect any changes to be made at the quarterback position. Colin Kaepernick has regressed. There's no doubt about that, but I think there was too much on his plate. Sometimes you have to just take a quarterback for what he's worth. And this guy, much like Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson can throw the football from the pocket, but you don't want Russell Wilson throwing the football from the pocket all the time. That's not his strength. His strength is being a playmaker, getting outside of the pocket and making things happen when the play breaks down, and also getting outside the pocket on bootlegs. Use his strengths. And Colin Kaepernick, same deal. Get him outside the pocket, allow him to use his athleticism and that uncanny ability to fling the football with that right arm, and allow him to do things other than just try to dissect defenses from the pocket, which is not his strength. Don't have him flinging the football around the field 35 times if not necessary. Let the running backs run the football. Let this team have a happy balance of run and pass. Allow him to go play action fake and drive the football down the field. Allow him to throw into some open windows. When you sit back and have a guy throwing the football as much as the 49ers had this team throwing the football this year with Greg Norman as the offensive coordinator, this is what happens. Things like this happen. Guys regress. This was not a good offensive game plan this season for Colin Kaepernick. I think you hit the reset button, you come back, and you do it over with him, and he'll be fine, in my estimation. And so now, those were all great questions. I thank you for your participation. Looking for more of your participation next week. We jump into the what if, and I've got the responses from last week's what if, and it was really simple. Last week, I posed the what if. If you are in week 17, your team's not very good, you're a 3-12 team going into the final game of the season, and you're playing one of your most hated rivals, they've got a chance to go to the postseason, and they're looking to get in. If they win, they're in. If they lose, they're going to be on the couch next to you watching the postseason. So you have the ability to do irreparable damage to the season of your most hated rival. The only kicker is, if you win the game, your draft status changes drastically. I mean, the number 2 pick in the draft is a big deal versus the number 5 pick. Now, for some of you, I really wanted to come back this week with another what if, which was a remix of the one I gave you last week, because I thought to myself too, is 3 picks really that much of a difference? Is it that much of a difference where I feel like it's a necessity to not win that game because I need this pick that much? Because, first of all, let me give you my answer. My answer is simple. I want to win every single game. I don't give a damn if it's my rival or not. I'm not a tank guy. I've never been. I don't care if I'm slated to get the number 1 pick in the draft and I really need a quarterback. I want to win. I hate losing, period. End of discussion. So if you tell me I got a chance to beat my most hated rival in week 17 and stop them from going to the postseason, oh, that's just icing on the cake, man. I'll take that one all day long. There's no doubt about it. I want to beat that rival, and I want to beat them in the worst way. And so, for me, it's not even up for debate. I mean, even if I had the number 1 pick and you tell me I can get my hands on an Andrew Luck guy, I still want to win that football game. The joy that I will feel in that moment will soften the blow of not getting Andrew Luck in the draft, even though Andrew Luck can change your franchise for the next 10 to 15 years, and that one win will only last you for, a week, a month, the whole offseason. But you don't know what can happen. That team that you let in could win the Super Bowl. I mean, what happens then? I mean, I wouldn't be able to live with myself if they won the Super Bowl. I can't stand that team. They go in, I had a chance to beat them, they get in, they win the Super Bowl. Man, that would stink. So, no, I can't have it happen. I gotta win. No way the rival is coming into my building, or whether it's on the road or at home, doesn't matter. I got to win that football game. But this was the responses I received from you guys using the assistance of my smartphone. Alan Walker says, I would swallow my pride and lose that one, since your record obviously indicates you need a game changer for the next season, and a second overall number 2 pick gives you the second player normally in the draft. Don't let your ego cloud your judgment. Look, I can't tell anybody how to feel about this. I'm a winner. Winners win. I don't know what else to do but win. I'm trying to win every single game. And if you tell me I can beat my rival, oh, hell yeah, sign me up. But Alan Walker is saying, look, man, I need that second best player in the draft. I can't knock the hustle, man. I can't do it at all. Benjamin Upton says, I believe you need to lose that game. To see my team, and he's a 49ers fan, succeed from the draft will give me a greater satisfaction than beating the Seahawks in the season finale. Look, again, I can't tell you how to feel. I can't do it. If that's the way you feel, more power to you. My man Jay Moo, what up, Jay Moo? What's going on, man? Jay Moo says, misery loves company. Amen, amen, amen. Misery loves company. Absolutely. If you lose that game, you have to hear the chirping of that other fan base for at least a month. I want that win. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, man. If I'm going down, man, them boys coming with me. We got Ofo, really, my man Ofo. What's going on, Ofo? He says, and he's emphatic with his, he says, gotta, period, beat, period, the, period, rival, period. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. So he's basically saying, there's nothing to discuss here. You beat the rival. I'm all for it, man. I'm on board. Sign me up. Money Miz says, this one makes me think, but I'm going for the upset win. Gotta have it. He says, if you try to lose on purpose, just ending your season on a bad note, not giving you any momentum heading into the next year, isn't a good thing. He says, especially if the coach isn't back with that kind of record, most likely he's not going to be back. You want to finish off the season with some pride. So he's taking a different approach, but it's all the same. He wants to win that game as well. You move on to Cubone, and my man Cubone basically says, it's simple. He says, destroy the rival in all caps. He's on board for getting that W. I'm not trying to go to the postseason. Look, he said, if I'm not going to the postseason, I'm dragging my rival with me. Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. He says, look, having that number 2 pick isn't that far off from the number 5 pick. I don't feel like I'm losing that much. And I felt like that when I made that what if. I said, maybe I should extend that out a little bit further. But realistically, if you lose one game, you're not usually going to fall 6 or 7 picks. I mean, if you're a 2-3 win team, winning one game generally doesn't move you down, 5 or 6 picks. I mean, normally you win a game, you move 2, 3, 4 picks maybe max, but you don't move 5 or 6 slots down. So I had to make it realistic. But those were all the answers. All of them were great answers. All of them were responses that I can respect. Again, I'm trying to win that game. Absolutely. Hands down, no questions asked. This is your what if for next week. All right. So I need you to put your GM cap on for a minute. We're going GM style here. Put your GM cap on and listen up. Here's the what if. You are the new GM of a 10-6 team. The old GM has decided to hang it up. And so you inherit a team that's not that bad now. They missed the postseason barely at 10-6. And so you inherit a coach that the owner loves, and so does the locker room. And you get there and you're like, man, me and this guy go way back. I like this guy. He's a cool guy. This should be fun. I should have a great time working with this head coach. I've known him for 15 years. I feel like this is a match made in heaven. So it all seems great, right? But you get there and you have an off season together and you realize quickly your philosophies don't mesh. He's a defensive-minded head coach. You're an offensive guy. You want to build the team one way. He's got a roster already that he likes. You're not enamored and thrilled with the roster the way it's constructed. You'd like to make some tweaks. He doesn't want you to touch anything. And so you really are at the point now where you're like, this isn't what I signed up for. You want to fire this guy, but you can't. You're coming off a 10-6 season. So in your mind, you're saying to yourself, if this guy tanks next season, I'm going to fire him. Well, he goes 9-7. They make it into the back door of the postseason, win a wild card game. They get ousted in the divisional round. Now you can't fire him. And now the fan base is excited. The players in the locker room feel like they're on the cusp of doing something great. And so all things point to this guy being a fixture with this franchise for a while. And so now it puts you in a tough situation because now in the upcoming draft, you see a quarterback that you're fixated on. You've been watching this guy for the last 2 years. You feel like he could be the difference between you winning some Super Bowls here with this franchise and you potentially being the same team that you are right now, a middle of the pack team, can sneak in the back door of the postseason, but probably won't win. Your coach loves the quarterback that he has. He's a Matthew Stafford type quarterback, a guy that you're like, he's okay, can get you where you want to go, but won't win you a Super Bowl. And so the head coach is fine with him because he feels like his defense is good enough. If you make a couple of tweaks here and there, they're going to be able to get over the hump. And the defensive-minded head coach sees a player in the draft, an outside linebacker that can come in and he feels like can change the game. And you feel like, too, that this guy can change the game, but you feel like an upgrade at the quarterback position is what this team needs to get them over the hump. You want the quarterback, he wants the outside linebacker. You could use some help getting pressure on the quarterback, but in your mind, you start with the quarterback and build there. In this coach's mind, I need this defensive player. Here's your what if. You can't fire the coach because he's doing a really good job right now. Your philosophies aren't meshing well together. What do you do? Do you A, find a way to justify getting rid of this coach? Do you B, hang on to the coach and draft the quarterback, which might ruffle some feathers in the organization, within the locker room? Or do you C, comply to the head coach, draft the outside linebacker, bite your tongue, and see what happens? Now, keep in mind, you're with this coach for your second season now. If things don't go well, you still haven't hired your own head coach. Now, it could go one of two ways. If you're successful with this coach, you're going to get a lot of the praise. If you win, if you lose, you could take the blame and you could be fired. So what do? Do you take the quarterback that you want, or do you take the defensive end outside linebacker that the coach wants? And what do you do with the head coach? Because obviously he's running the team the way that he wants, and he's putting up a big stink about it. And right now the owner's in his corner, so is the fan base, and so is the locker room. What if? And so that's going to do it for week number 16, Supply and Demand Thursday edition of In the Lab Room. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here in the Lab Room. Come back and join me as I continue to break down week number 16 in the National Football League. See you tomorrow. Also, I will be on Twitter during the Thursday night game. And so if you want to chat during the game, I'll be up there. Come and holler at your boy. We'll have some fun. Maybe this game won't entertain us as much, but we'll have a good time chatting it up anyhow. I'll see you then. Have a good one.
In the Lab Room.